Hello, welcome to this first tutorial where I'll be showing you how to create a 2D game character for your platformer game in Photoshop. This character can then be exported into your software of choice for animation using a spine-like animation software, which I'll be covering in another video. But to begin with, in this tutorial, I'll be showing you my process for creating a character such as this one in several steps. So you can skip ahead if you are understanding certain steps or others. The first step of the creation is probably the most important one, which is coming up with your character in sketches or any way you'd like. In my case, I was sketching the character, as you can see here, starting with a concept from just the way the character is going to be able to attack with his belly, being shaped like a large circular ball. Um, and then taking that concept and trying to design a character from it. So experimenting with various options, and you can do this however you like. You can copy along with my character if you prefer and if you like the character. Um, so this is how I was testing certain ideas along the way, removing and changing them, iterating until finally settling on a final design option, which is what I'll be tracing on top of today in Photoshop. Um, and then later moving it into a game. The next step is what I call blocking out the character inside of Photoshop. I like to work on a canvas which is 1000 by 1000 pixels in size. And these are my settings that I normally create. So nothing has changed inside of this format. I like to work on a 1000 by 1000 canvas so that it's easier to scale down and maintain as much quality as possible. Then the next thing is to import your sketch, which you want to keep at the top of your file so that you can increase and decrease the opacity as you work. Um, and from then, we are trying to achieve what I'm showing you here, which is a block out of the character, of the character's main shapes in separate objects. So for example, the arm is a separate object, as you can see here. So are the sleeves, the head, the body, the legs, and the other arm. To create these shapes, I use the pen tool inside of Photoshop, which some of you might not know how to use, and therefore I'll be quickly demonstrating just some of its basic features. First of all, this is the pen tool over here. I've already selected it by pressing the letter P on my keyboard. Once you do that, let's just create a new layer so that it's easier to draw. Once you do that, you can left click wherever you like, and as you'll see, keep in mind these are my settings at the top. You should copy them if you'd like to create a shape with a fill and not a stroke. A stroke is an outline, whereas a fill is the shape that's being created. So this inside. So while I'm just simply left clicking on the screen, you see it's creating these sharp corners wherever I click. And right now, this blue line shows the connection between the points. As I've not closed the shape yet, there is an area which does not have a blue line. So if I click back on the original point, the shape is going to close and it's completed, creates a shape here. And if I press escape, it deselects the shape. So that's great. Now we can move the shape about with the transform tool. Um, and we have it. We could also, what the great power of creating shapes, which is why I use them for creating the characters originally, is that you can edit the process very easily. So once, let's say I don't like this shape, I can move these points about however I want. There. And this is what, let's say I like. Another feature of the shape tool, of the pen tool, excuse me, is the ability to create Bezier curves. So by simply left clicking, you create a point, but if you left click and drag, you create these two anchor points that you can then move about to create a different angle curve. So this way it's very easy to trace over a drawing, which you'll see in the next part of the video, to simplify your shape. It's a bit tricky maybe to get used to at the start, so it's good to practice by tracing over drawings. But once you get the hang of it, it's a very powerful tool that you can, like the pen tool, or like the other option, also go back into and edit using the direct selection tool. So by clicking on a point, you can see the two Bezier curves, anchors, and move them around, or move the point around, and then thereby distort the shape, the original shape. The original point here, as you can see, does not have anchor points. And this isn't always desirable because it can create a dent like this, which just doesn't fit the rest of the shape, which is very fluid. And in order to change that, you can first of all start by left click and dragging, but sometimes you forget, sometimes you make a mistake, whatever it may be. So in order to fix that, you select what is called the convert point tool over here, which then gives this kind of inverse V shape. And if you left click and drag on a point, you can convert it into an anchor point. This works in reverse as well. So let's say I want to make this one a sharp corner. You can left click it as well. And this way you can reduce the shape to a rectangle over here. Okay, so besides that, the next important thing to mention is that the shape's color can easily be altered by selecting the direct selection tool, which then opens up this menu above. And using the menu, you can pick whatever color you like. So by changing the color here first, let's pick a red. It automatically updates the recently used colors. You can also use your palettes if that's what you prefer, and then update the color. For the blockout, I tend to work using shades of black, or gray rather, just to distinguish between different objects and to get an idea of the silhouette, whether it works now that it's presented digitally or not. And then you can make adjustments to your original concept or carry on with what you like. So now I'll just jump into a time lapse of my creation process for this part of the character using the tools that I've just explained. Third step in the process is using color and adding color to the character, which we've already created in black and white colors for now. Um, and now we're going to basically assign colors to different body parts. To do this, you need to first select how I like to work is to first select the color palette, um, which can be done however you like, using maybe just colors that you like. However, sometimes it's better to come with a predetermined kind of assumption of which colors work well together. In my case, it's these kind of tutti frutti candy colors pastel palette, which you can see I've got here at the top. So I was just easily selecting the colors using the eyedropper tool as I worked and then assigning them to different objects. And if you would like to get your own color palette, I have some links that I would recommend, which are colorhunt.co, which gives you already pre-created color palettes by other people. You can search for your own, depending on the theme, or looking at the most common tags provided on the website. It's very simple to use and it's all free, much like the other website, which is called coolers.co, which I love using. It allows you to change in between color palettes very quickly and just picking different shades. The website automatically assigns colors that work well together. So you can do that or follow along with my palette, but I'll just let the video play in the time lapse and you can see how I'm assigning it to different objects of this character. And you'll also see me creating these shapes here, which is like the step before done simply by tracing over the drawing, with the only difference being that these shapes now, I'll show you here, are you created as clipping masks to the body. So the body objects that we've created, which is black in your case probably for now, has several different shapes clipped to it. So I could disable them. And for example, let's release the top clipping mask just for you to understand what's really happening. So this is the clipping mask at the bottom here. So when I right click, create clipping mask, it clips it to the shape below, which is the body. So anything that is outside of the shape will not be visible, only the inside. All right. final step is to add paint to the character. So using various different brushes inside of Photoshop and drawing on top of the colored character which we created. So after this step, however, also including the shapes on top. So to paint, you need to first select the brush tool. And using the brush tool, which is probably the most common tool inside of Photoshop, we can then draw using a variety of different brushes. I've got quite a lot here, so if you select your brush and right click, you'll be able to open up this menu which shows you all of your existing brushes. Ignore all of these folders which are for my other projects. The only 4 brushes that matter are, or rather only 3, this one is not going to be used in this tutorial, is the soft round brush, the hard round brush, and Kyle's spatter brush. Kyle's spatter brushes, Supreme Spatter and Texture brush tool in parentheses is the full name if you don't have it, but it should come with your Photoshop by default. If not, I'm pretty sure Kyle's spatter brushes are available for free online, so you can just Google it and use it on other software if you're following along using a different program. Also, you don't have to use this brush. You will get along just fine by using the soft round and hard round brush, but these two I think are necessary. So how I paint on top of the character, like I mentioned, is using the clipping masks. So for example, the easiest way to explain is to show the paint that's applied on the body. So as you see here in the layers, we've got the body and then a clipping mask, which doesn't have a shape. So if I disable that, you can see that some of the paint, which is hidden behind the shapes on the body, this kind of paint, the colorful patches, which are here. And then on top of those, excuse the layer management, none of it is named except for the main part, because once we merge it, this nomenclature doesn't matter anymore. But for these layers here, for example, you can see that I painted a kind of shadow below the character's head so as to make it look more real, give it perspective and depth. And this was done just by using the soft round brush, decreasing the size, and then selecting pink. And then from that pink, you can go just a little bit darker. You can watch the opacity, bring it down. I normally go to bring it down to something like 20, and then you draw. So if I draw, you see it's very faint, but if I go over it several times, depending on how much I want to darken it, the darker it will get. So you can get this kind of shadow like we've got here. I'm just going to undo this because it doesn't matter for this now. And then with the spatter brush, the same principle applies. So you select the spatter brush, and I like to, this is a stylized effect that I'm using for this game. You don't have to follow it if you don't like it. You can simply use the soft brush and add shadows on parts where you want the shadows to be. So for example, on this arm, I've added the shadow, however, not using a soft brush, but rather using this Kyle's spatter brush. I've also added that surrounding the patches. So if we select the same color as here, and then paint, you see it adds this kind of splatter of paint, and it just gives us the stylized effect that fits the character very well. And then finally, the last step is to add the markings, which again are a part of my own style for the game, but they may apply to whatever character you may be doing. If you're drawing clothing or something else for yours, and to do this, you simply select a white color or any other color you like, really. But for my case, it's white, and then selecting the hard round brush, just draw. Let's make a star here, some kind of space star, and then dots, and then you can, to fade it in, make it look like it's a part of the character. You use the eraser tool with a lower opacity and erase some of the edges So you keep certain parts fainter than others and blend it into the character. So here at the end of this video, I would just like to quickly recap the steps we took to create this character before beginning the next tutorial. The first step was sketching the character, coming up with design, and bringing that into Photoshop so that it can be traced on top of. The next step was creating a blockout using basic shapes of the character and in black and white, in grayscale, before eventually adding color from a selected color palette generated online or from your own source, and then based on that color palette, applying it to various objects, testing the color palette, and deciding on the final uh, vision of the character. And then the final step is adding detail to the character, uh, drawing and painting using textured brushes to complete the design. And now that we're here, I might as well mention that it's very useful to keep all of your separate objects organized in different groups, as before we export it into an animation software, it's crucial that each limb is a part of its own object. So when it's animated, a single bone can control this leg, another bone can control this leg. Therefore, there are grouped into groups here in Photoshop. So you've got the left leg here, the right leg as its own object. But if you go inside, really there's several objects. But what we'll be doing next is combining these groups and exporting the images into another software, Godot, uh, and animating it. So thanks for watching.